Bonjour, how may I help? Moment. The answer is no. Mad. In this series of videos, we'll show you some of the lesser known aspects behind a successful body transformation.
And introduce you to some practical advice for taking your results to the next level.
The full series and bonus videos are all available to watch for free at bellyproof.com. No, this series will not tell you to eat less and train more.
Run for 5 hours a day,
Watch your calories,
or drink nothing but water for a week. What this series will do is give you something new and exciting to get you faster results.
stick with us and learn how to become Bellyproof.
In this video, we're going to talk about muscle development, mobility, movement, and posture. We can say with confidence you are going to learn a few new things.
We'll get to the muscle stuff in the second part of this video. Firstly, we want to talk about the mobility approach and how we pick exercises that people can do and benefit from, whether you're a top athlete or a flexible granny.
This video will give you specific answers to so many questions. So watch it and take notes if you need to.
Let's get right into it, starting with our approach to mobility and movement. Our approach to mobility and movement is rather simple.
Our approach is to make shit work nice.
Excusez mon français. Your body can move in many ways.
We are talking about fancy words like mobility, flexibility, and stability, which most people think means stretching.
But here's what they really mean. Mobility is your ability to move a joint through a range of motion.
Flexibility is when it's passive, when you are being moved by external forces or objects.
Like when you stretch against a door frame.
Stability is your ability to resist movement. For example, core stability is about resisting a change in the position of the spine.
Which is super important if you are lifting heavy weights or moving about and don't want to compromise your spine.
While you have many movement options, you also have limitations. And whenever you run into a limitation, your only option is to compensate. Try flexing your hip by bringing your knee up. At what point you can't go any further without your other knee bending or your lower back rounding.
That's called a movement compensation. Try standing barefoot on one side, with your eyes open, and then again with your eyes closed.
At what point does your foot lose its ability to stabilize and resist the change of position, where it starts caving in, dragging the ankles, knees, and pelvis with it?
This happens all the time, and it's part of human movement.
So, while you may not be testing your hip flexion or how high your knee goes daily, you are still using it every day. For example, every time you dip squat.
The same compensations will happen then. It's a similar case with foot stability. Think about running. You spend 50% of your time on your left foot and 50% on your right.
If you can't keep a stable foot when you try your very hardest standing still, you stand no chance to keep it stable when you're not even trying, as in when you're running and busy producing forces from that very unstable foot.
At the end of the day, our bodies are amazing and very good at finding a way, compensating if you like, and there's nothing wrong with that.
We all have movement options and we all compensate, each and every one of us. The problem starts when your only option is to compensate over and over again. Caving that knee just a little, but all the time, or rounding your back just slightly, but far too often.
What happens when we overdo things is very similar to what would happen if you trained your biceps over and over. At some point, it will bloody hurt.
And if you couldn't stop because you're using it by mistake instead of something else, you might even get tendonitis, bicep tear, or some other sort of pain and injury.
Most people assume that you get stiff and tight as you age, and that everyone could do well if you just have the willpower to push harder at the gym.
We think you get stiff by not moving over the years, and that stretching provides a small relief, but almost never corrects the problem.
This is why our approach doesn't assume good movement, it teaches it. Our approach relies on making shit work nice.
We work both on your active and passive ranges. We help you to dissociate, and we give you stability challenges throughout the training. And it connects. Working on your stability means you engage type 1 muscle fibers everywhere, the same fibers high in mitochondria. Get it now?
We improve your alignment, your spine, and your movement awareness.
We have extreme fat loss coupled with clever mobility training because we believe they are both important and they do cross over.
Mobility itself can be extremely complex. Our approach is rather simple. It is to make shit work nice.
Because when you work on your ability to move better, then you can move better and you don't have to compensate so much.
And when you don't compensate so much, there's less chance of injury or pain.
And as you learn to move better and with less pain,
then you generally don't have to worry about shit. Most profoundly, when you make shit work nice, shit works nice. Merde.
In our program, we like to use self-limiting exercises. It's a very different way of thinking, but it's more doable by everyone, regardless of their fitness level. And it also means more fat breaking and fat burning.
Does that mean calisthenics, stretching, weightlifting, or cardio?
Yeah, no, well, sort of. It's a bit of everything, but mainly it's stuff that you can do with your own body, not relying on weights for resistance, but not doing it easily.
For example, a high jump. Everyone can jump, and it will be equally as challenging. An unfit, overweight person probably would not be able to jump as powerfully or as high as a well-trained athlete.
But guess what? Both of them are jumping as high as they can and as explosive as they can. They can both do it, and it's challenging for both of them.
The intensity is self-limiting.
You can only jump as high and as powerfully as you can jump. But either way, we are confident that A, you can do it, and B, you will engage type 2B muscle fibers in the process.
Which means it will be classed as fat breaking.
Here's another example. If you look at this movement, you'd quickly realize that it's both type 2A muscle fibers due to the concentrics involved, and also type 1 muscle fibers due to the stability and alignment challenge in it.
Anyone can do it, and everyone will fatigue. But before you get to that point, you will be able to perform a number of them repeatedly.
The challenge to the alignment is also doable, yet engaging for every person. And while you can make it easier or harder,
in all cases, it's doable yet challenging, whether you're a beginner, a professional athlete, or their flexible granny. We do not discriminate, and we design our program with everyone in mind. So you can be guaranteed you can do it, and you can bet it will still be challenging.
And this is why we get hate mail from everyone equally. Hey, why do you hate me? Hey? Our fat loss program is focused on fat loss, but we do have mobility and movement integrated into every part of it.
We don't quite teach you complex calisthenic stuff like this, or this, all of which are available outside of the fat loss program.
We do, however, take your mobility and movement development seriously and train you to make sheet work nice.
So that you can move with confidence and not feel like shit. What? Next, we want to cover muscles. In the past, we've been getting comments like,
you've had muscles before you started and it's different for obese people.
Muscle memory, duh. Your body burns more calories the more muscles that you have. Obviously, it's different for people that have been obese for a long time.
Or concerns like, can I do my bodybuilding at the same time?
And will I lose my muscles during fat loss? These are all going to get answered in this video, but before we do that, we need to explain a few simple things about muscles.
We are not going to dive in too much into bodybuilding because it is a complex subject in its own right. But we are going to touch on something that a lot of even experienced bodybuilders don't really know.
But hopefully will after this video. We're talking about myonuclear stuff.
Which really everyone that's into muscle should be interested in.
When it comes to building muscle mass, we are generally talking about 3 types of muscle growth or hypertrophy. You have sarcoplasmic and myofibrillar hypertrophies, both of which are considered short-term. You then have myonuclear accretion, which is considered a long-term hypertrophy.
Here are the basics. When you train your muscles, certain actions such as pumping, creating lactic acid, inflammatory agents, and CO2 all contribute to the expansion of the plasma. That gooey stuff that makes the bulk of the muscle and gives it its size.
This plasma also contains mitochondria and glycogen. This is also known as sarcoplasmic hypertrophy.
When you train with high tension, whether you are creating it
Or you are resisting an external weight,
you are triggering myofibrillar hypertrophy, more commonly known as protein synthesis.
These myofibrils are contractile protein, actin and myosin, which run the length of a muscle fibre.
The last type, myonuclear accretion, is probably the most important, most interesting, and ironically the least known to most people.
See, most cells have one nucleus, but muscle cells have multiple nuclei.
Each myonucleus, myo means muscle, controls a domain around it, which contains the sarcoplasm and contractile protein.
This is called the myonuclear domain, and each domain has a ceiling, known as the myonuclear ceiling.
It's quite simple. Your body looks to adapt to stresses, and when you fill your existing domain with plasma and contractile protein, or in other words,
when you reach the myonuclear ceiling, your body will need to produce more myonuclei to expand the existing domain, so that you can continue packing on more plasma and protein.
Another, more direct way to add more myonuclei is to train for muscle damage. The best way to do it is via high threshold fast eccentrics, ideally above the maximal concentric ability. Muscle damage, or micro tears, triggers movement of stem cells known as myoblasts, mobilized to repair the damage. As they move to repair, they donate their nucleus into the muscle fiber. This is known as satellite cell fusion. Myonuclei are pretty much impossible to lose. They are sort of permanent. And the more of them you've got, the more sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and the more protein synthesis that will be available to you long term.
In other words, more myonuclei equals larger muscle size potential, and this is almost irreversible.
If you stop building, you gradually start losing sarcoplasm and protein around each myonuclei, but you don't lose the potential. This is why you can regain muscle fast, and also why bodybuilders on a break, they might not look big, pumped and impressive, but you can still tell they're bodybuilders.
That's because you never really lose muscle.
If you want to dig a bit deeper, you can take a look at bellyproof.com/muscle.
Now that we have this basic picture of what makes muscles bigger, it's time to start answering some questions.
The first thing we want to look at is, can you build muscle and lose fat at the same time? The answer is both yes and no.
There are many things to consider, but the easiest 3 are glycogen, amino acids, and planning.
To build muscle, you need glycogen levels high. This allows you to produce better pumps.
And the pump is a critical component for muscle building, especially for sarcoplasmic hypertrophy.
To lose fat, you want your glycogen levels low, because low glycogen means less competition for burning fatty acids in the mitochondria. And you really want your mitochondria to favor burning fatty acids and not burning glycogen.
You can have your glycogen levels high to favor muscle building, or low to favour fat loss. But you can't have both high and low together, therefore you have to choose. The same goes for fasted training, which is critical for fat loss to control insulin.
In contrast, when you bodybuild, you do better if you eat a few hours before training, both to restore glycogen, but also to saturate your blood with amino acids, the building blocks of protein, before you start contracting muscles.
You can't exactly remain fasted for fat loss, but at the same time, do the opposite for bodybuilding. You really have to favour one.
Lastly, neither fat loss nor muscle building is just about randomly hitting every muscle group. In effective muscle building, you aim to hit target muscle groups multiple times, generating fatigue strategically as you aim to periodize tension, muscle damage, and metabolic stress.
Fat loss training is all about triggering fat breaking followed by fat burning as many times as possible. Meaning you want to balance stresses to avoid fatigue rather than stress muscle groups.
Both types of training generate a lot of fatigue and they rely on a very different overall design.
It's hard enough to dedicate 100% of your energy to one goal, let alone splitting that energy over multiple goals, achieving little to no result.
We suggest aiming for one goal and basing your strategy around that goal. Try and aim for both muscle building and fat loss together, and you will be left feeling exhausted with no energy and likely disappointed in your results.
Here's the reality. You can build muscle and burn fat at the same time, but for these three reasons, if you combine both together, the progress will be slow. So, what can you do? Luckily, there are a few crossovers. In bodybuilding, you can use the fasted state from the night to squeeze in a bit more fat loss, assuming you don't wake up in the middle of the night to eat.
Ooh, I'm freaking starving.
This is reflected in the Bellyproof muscle building program.
When we train for fat loss, we have multiple methods strategically placed in order to increase the workload without making you overly fatigued.
This includes eccentric training, metabolic training, and high tension training. While we still have to prioritise for maximum fat loss, we do have some variables to play with.
And add a little bit of strategic work or manipulate tension. We can't quite give you maximum hypertrophy when you do fat loss, but
a bit of targeted work is possible without compromising the structure, especially if we target those muscles that recover faster.
We use it to develop the six-pack for the men and firm up the arms and thighs for the ladies.
Because sure, losing fat is the main thing, and that's great, but it's even nicer if you have a little muscle definition underneath that fat to reveal. We can help you achieve both, so we do. Simple.
This brings us to the next question. Will you lose muscle during fat loss? The answer is yes, but not a lot.
True muscle size is dynamic. If you have huge biceps and you go to the gym, you'll come out pumped with even bigger biceps, at least for a few hours anyway.
So instead of 100% of what you got, you'd look like you get 110.
If you go on holiday or stop training, your size is likely to reduce by something like 20 to 30% over time, but you don't lose that hard muscle that you've gained.
Remember, you have your short-term hypertrophy factors like your sarcoplasm and like your protein, which are living in the domain of your myonuclei. Now, your myonuclei are pretty much there to stay. Unless you stop moving around or stop breathing, you will keep them.
The moment you stop bodybuilding, you start losing the short-term stuff.
Atrophy, or basically, you lose a little muscle protein and sarcoplasm each day you don't train for bodybuilding.
And the only way to prevent it is to engage in bodybuilding every day
for the rest of your life and never miss a day in the gym, bro.
It's really important you understand it. The moment you stop bodybuilding, whether you are sick, changing your diet,
or taking a holiday, or indeed doing anything else, including fat loss, and you will gradually start losing size. And it's not because of fat loss, it's because you stopped bodybuilding.
Let's see. Firstly, we are not talking about huge amounts of muscle loss. And every bit of muscle you think you've lost, you can gain back in a short amount of time. Secondly, the stuff you lose is not your hard-gained myonuclei, but rather the more easily gained sarcoplasm or muscle protein, the gooey stuff. Ever resumed bodybuilding after a long break and realised that your strength and size have returned just within a few weeks?
This is similar to what you can expect with fat loss.
In fact, in the last few days of the programme, we conclude by restoring glycogen levels to the muscles and restoring their size,
which will highlight your body transformation even further.
A few last bits before we wrap up.
We all want to lose a lot of fat, build muscle, become super mobile, and learn how to move well.
And we all wish it was just about eating well, training hard, and balancing our calories.
The more you learn about fat loss, muscle building, and skill training, the more you realize each of them requires a very different strategy.
And while fat loss can be quick when done right, building serious muscle or serious movement skills can take serious time. There is no point in taking your resources and splitting them over multiple goals, never truly achieving great results.
You have to decide where to focus your energy at any given point and dedicate your resources to that goal in full. And with the right strategy, you can achieve amazing results.
Does having more muscle help you lose fat? Well, yes, a little, because with bigger muscles, you usually have more strength, glycogen capacity, and more mitochondria.
The opposite is also true, as being leaner generally helps you build muscle faster, partly due to lower estrogen. If you want to lose fat, the best thing you can do is to dedicate your resources to fat loss. As we teach you in this program, there is no point working for 2 years on building muscles just so you can lose fat maybe 5% faster when you finally decide to do it one day.
Well, if you wanted to both build muscle and lose fat, we suggest the fat loss option first, as this is a much quicker process. We're often accused of being fit and muscular from years of training, and that fat loss is different if you've been obese for a long time. We're not going to pretend that we didn't have muscles underneath the fat, but come on, we weren't exactly cover model ready, were we? In reality, having some muscles is great, but it's only a tiny help in the fat loss process.
A relatively muscular person will have more muscles to show when they're lean. A less muscular person will not have as much muscles to show when they're lean. But regardless, they're both going to look much better without the excess layers of body fat.
Can unfit people do it who've been overweight for a long time?
Remember how we said our exercise design is quite self-limiting by nature and that we get hate mail from everyone equally. So both unfit people and athletes alike give us feedback to say it's doable, but it's challenging. We designed a fitness program knowing that most people who will do it will have fitness issues, mobility issues, and will be overweight.
If you doubt that, we suggest you go over to our website and take a few minutes to browse through the ever-growing before and after section.
You will quickly see that these results are from people of all shapes and sizes, of all ages and fitness abilities.
They all followed the Bellyproof program, and just like them, you can also achieve your own great results. Feeling a little lost? Want to do it yourself?
We all have obstacles. Get to the point that you're not in pain and that you can move a little bit, even if it's just basic movement. Clear a little bit of time to do the workouts and make sure you meet the basic strength requirements that you can find on the website.
And then join us. Don't just think about it or tell your friends you're going to start it next week, but you never do. Or complain that you're too unfit to even do a fitness program. Come on, that's bonkers.
Just tell someone you're going to do it, and we will do our best to help you in every turn to make sure that the next success story you watch is your own. One last thing before we wrap up.
We are including an extra bonus video on the channel to talk about maintenance after the program and to give you personal insight into our own experience. So we hope to see you there.
This concludes our 5-part series. We hope you found it entertaining and learned a thing or two.
As always, if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch or leave us a comment in the official channel.
If you want to do the program yourself, head over to bellyproof.com and sign up.
And we would love to help you do it and become Bellyproof.
See you there!